Welcome to the Next Mountain podcast, where we meet exited leaders and founders, turn transitions into purpose and impact. Today, we're speaking to Yancy Wright, the facilitator and coach that executives call when they're ready to stop playing it safe and want to do the deep work. He has led over 500 nature-based retreats, guiding high-impact leaders to confront blind spots, limiting beliefs, and unconscious habits that quietly cap their potential. After burning out as a leader in the green building industry in 2013, Yancy founded Casa Alternavida, a wellness retreat center in Puerto Rico, where he now leads immersive nature experiences reconnecting leaders to purpose, presence, and authentic leadership. His mission is to help leaders evolve from the inside out and amplify the ripple effect they have on their companies, relationships, and life. If you enjoy these conversations, don't forget to follow or subscribe to Next Mountain wherever you're listening and join us on the path from success to stewardship. And without further ado, let's get started. All right. Well, hi, Yancy. Welcome to Next Mountain.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's so nice to have you here. So before we dive in, first, if you can share your full name and maybe share the place you call home and how does that inform your life today?
My name is Yancy Wright. The place that I call home is Puerto Rico. It's in the Caribbean island chain. I'm actually living in the retreat center I built here right next to the rainforest and right next to the beach. I joke that I brainwash people to take better care of themselves. And while that could be true and is partially true, I actually work with leaders that have stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and burnout, and by doing retreats. So I facilitate a lot of leadership development retreats, working on conscious communication skills, and then also work with individual leaders that are struggling because we have life that goes on. And so I built a really beautiful high vibration space here on the island for people to come to. And the work that I do is about helping them see what they're not seeing about themselves and unlocking limiting beliefs and better understanding how to create some mindset shifts, behavior shifts, so they can get more aligned with what they're meant to be doing here in the world. And so I do that in multiple formats, like working with individuals, working with groups, working with companies that want to do team building that better enhances collaboration. So I'll work in different ways, but the purpose or the essence of it is to help people get more aligned with, being more in harmony with themselves, more in harmony with communicating with each other and in their essence, like why we're brought into this world.
It sounds much more fun than brainwashing.
Well, brainwashing is like, we always associate a negative side to it, right? And yet literally when we go to sleep at night, our brain cells shrink up to 60% so that we can have a true brainwash because our cerebral spinal fluid is clearing out the neurotoxins. So we always assume brainwashing is bad, but we literally go through a brainwashing every night when we get a full night of sleep. And brainwashing for people who come here is like, hey, if we can give them a taste of what it's like to live really healthy, eat amazing food, be out in nature every day, do deep transformational coaching and take care of themselves, and as a result they change their behaviors, then that's a positive side of brainwashing. Just by giving
thank you for flipping that perspective. I love it. Now I'm going to think about brainwashing every time I go to bed and wake up really rested. So Yancy, at Next Mountain we are honoring human contribution, from wonderful humans that have hiked the first mountain and been successful at it, and then have pivoted and transformed all of that and giving it to something more meaningful that has a different purpose and different impact. So could you tell us a bit more about your first mountain? Like, what was that like for you? Yeah, and what was success in that first mountain?
It's a good question, and I think I probably should start with just saying I grew up in the mountains. So I grew up in the mountains of Southern Oregon, like in the middle of nowhere, literally between Wonder and Wilderville on this redwood highway where they're not far from the redwood trees. And so with that kind of context, climbing mountains, my dad worked in the forest, so I grew up working in the forest with him and going to work with him when I was younger. So climbing mountains and being adventurous is just in my DNA. So I just want to give that context that to me, I don't want to settle. I'm not here in this lifetime to just kind of like, be at ease with just the standard modes of operating. So with that in mind, the first mountain I think was really so I studied architecture. I have a master's degree in architecture, and then I ended up working in architecture just for a short bit and then going from there into the construction industry. So I went to work for the largest general contractor in the state of Washington, Sell Construction, really amazing company. They've been around for like 85 years doing repeat work in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And that first mountain was like, how do I convince them that they need someone dedicated to focus on green building practices? And how do I create that role for myself? And so that was like the first mountain, was like, how do I create this purpose-driven, meaningful job for myself? Because the current job that I had as a engineer on a job site, like basically doing construction management, was not that exciting for me, because it was like super detailed and didn't have much meaning. And yeah, okay, so maybe we were building a hospital or maybe we were building an office building, but it wasn't that inspiring. So that took a few years. Finally got that done, and then I started creating this whole, inventing this approach, because it was early, like 2003, 2004, 2005, when green buildings
really pioneer work
starting to take off.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what does this mean to be director of sustainability? And like I held that role and eventually grew a team of people, and that went really well. And before we knew it, we were the greenest building general contractor, the largest green building contractor in the Pacific Northwest, and majority of our projects were pursuing a LEED certification, and I was managing all those projects in that way and collaborating internally, and things were going really good. We got some American Recovery Act stimulus funding, this grant funding to build, so I was able to collaborate with one of my coworkers, Andrew Radsky, and we created this whole curriculum, like the first in the nation green building safety training, first in the nation like green building contractor trainings, and that was going great. And then we just continued to grow, and the idea was like, okay, well, let's go buy another consulting firm. Well, but I wasn't totally in alignment with who we were buying, and that created a pretty good sized wobble for me for a while, because we ended up buying a firm with other offices and we weren't value aligned, and it just like tanked what we had built. And so financially we were struggling, and we weren't, there was just so many things happening, and I was already stretched super thin. So that mountain that I climbed, I got to a certain place where things were great, and then we decided to climb another mountain, or at least the people above me wanted us to keep climbing. And I would say that I tumbled pretty hard, because I ended up in the ICU. I ended up basically having a doctor come in. She handed me a sheet of paper and she said, listen, we're going to have to stop your heart and it may not restart, and we want you to sign here to not hold us liable. And I was like, first, I was in shock about what she had just said. And second, I was like, why do you care if I'm dead? Like, I'm not going to sue you.
Wow, our brain thinks of really weird things in these moments.
Yeah. So anyway, I signed the paper, and obviously I'm still here, but they had to shock my heart 3 times. It stopped the first time and didn't start the second time, and finally the third time it reset. And that was like a major wake-up call for me, that mountain that I had climbed was not done in balance. Like, it was just done as a marathon, and I was working a lot of hours, and I had really been passionate about the work I was doing. Like, I wanted to transform the building industry and building these green, sustainable buildings that were in harmony with nature. And so I was purpose-driven, but purpose-driven out of balance. So the first mountain tumbled down, the other side woke up in a valley of awareness where I'm like, man, this isn't working. What do I need to change? And
before we move on to the second or and third mountains, I'm curious, like, what was out of balance? Yeah, like, you speak of balance. What was out of balance? How did you get to the ICU? Like, that was quite Yeah,
so that's a really good question. For a lot of leaders, it's different things. For me, I was already eating healthy. I was already exercising. I don't really have any vices. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't do any drugs. And so those are all questions in the ICU, are like, you're doing a lot of caffeine. I don't even drink caffeine. So at that time in my life, I just had high levels of stress. And I had already had an incident about 3 or 4 months prior. I was speaking at a mayor's climate convention, video cameras and different things there. And I was already having issues where I'd notice something off with my heart, and I'd lose the blood pressure, and I'd get sort of faint or dizzy, and I passed out. I passed out in front of a whole group of people. And that was like, initial kind of like, hey, my body saying, hey, you need to slow down. But to answer your question, I just wasn't taking time off. I was working a lot of hours, wasn't really taking weekends. I wasn't really, creating a sleep routine where I'd stop looking at my devices in the evenings. I just kept going and going, always feeling like I was behind. And so I was putting a ton of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And my inner critic was running really strong, basically telling me I wasn't doing enough, wasn't moving fast enough, that I was going to fail.
And did you know you were stressed, Yancy?
Well, the doctor asked me, "Are you stressed out?" And I'm like, I mean, just seems normal. So what I recognize is that you don't always know you're burning out until you're burnt.
Yeah. No, that's a thing. When I was extremely stressed in the past, I didn't know until you kind of get out of it and you're like, oh, actually, it's just constant. And I couldn't tell. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I and also like, I think you named something, which is the inner critic. Was it something that was really, I guess, afterwards? And we can get to that journey, but I'm sure you had to make friends with it or discover where it's from, or how was that for you?
Oh, that's another awesome question, because I do a lot of inner critic work. We call it persona work with our guests, but for me, it's been a slow and consistent unraveling. Meaning I wasn't aware at that time that that's what was creating all the stress. At that time, I was stuck in more of a blame and victim mindset. You know, so basically I started jumping into some coaching programs about a year after I'd had this heart condition. I ended up leaving the company. I took a sabbatical, went back and just said, hey, my heart's not in this anymore. No pun intended, but my heart like literally was shifting. And I took quite a bit of time to phase out because I had so much that was, government contracts, grants and things. So I think I left after 6 or 8 months, and then I continued to work remotely for them for a while. So it wasn't like an abrupt thing. But what I did recognize was that the way that I was showing up as I started getting these coaching programs. So the Hendricks Institute, Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, they've authored many books, The Big Leap, Conscious Loving, The Corporate Mystic, a lot of really amazing books. They've been my mentors, and it was really their coaching program that helped me unlock a few key things. One, and Katie called me out in front of a big group in-person training. She's like, it sounds like you're unconsciously committed to struggle and work hard. And I was like, what? Wait. I mean, a lot of times when someone exposes an unlimiting belief, we're argue for it for a few minutes, and I was doing that. But the reality was that, yes, I was unconsciously committed to struggle and work hard. I was not aware anywhere near how harsh I was being on myself with my inner critic, and then how much pressure I was putting on myself. So, and like I said, even still, I'm still unraveling little layers of it, because that stuff all developed and evolved since I was little.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what was your conscious, what were the markers of success you were consciously looking for, during that first mountain?
First mountain. So really the big thing was to save the world, right? And that was probably one of the biggest things. I'm carrying the weight of the world on my back as if I have some, right to save the world. The world doesn't need saved. It's going to be just fine with or without us humans. And so what I've since realized is it's our human race that needs support. And it's not for me to save the human race. It's for me to work on myself so that those who need support, I can easily give support because of the deep inner work that I continue to do.
That's really great insight, because we both have evolved a bit in the impact investing and climate world, and often there's this perception that there's the bad people who just want to make money, and then there's the good people who want to save the world. And if you want to save the world, you're purpose driven by nature, but then what you're revealing is that also can be kind of something to hide behind, or to keep perpetuating a different something that's in effect extractive, because you need to prove to yourself that you're a good person by being a green person, or saving the world or whatever. So thank you for articulating, because I think for some people, especially some of the people we're talking to, some of them have had a lot of success building different kinds of businesses in all kinds of different fields. And there's this kind of middle place where people think, oh, well, now I'm going to dedicate myself to climate, and they get into techno-optimism track, but they don't realize that they're operating from the same mindset, as opposed to, digging deeper into, what's really driving me.
Yeah, that's a great point, Marie. And I also noticed that a lot of the people in the environmental world collude in this fear-based approach, that they're all keeping each other in this drama, fear-based mindset that they think is the best motivator, but it's not at all. And that's also what can really burn people out and stress people out. It doesn't optimize creativity and innovation.
So, going from having this kind of intense experience of facing
Near
your own
death.
mortality and all of this to where you are today, how would you describe that journey? Like you mentioned Hendrix's and doing coaching, and how did that calling kind of awaken itself in you in terms of helping other people that way?
I'm laughing because, a great story would be like, yeah, so I climbed that mountain, I tumbled down, and then I climbed this next mountain and all is good. But the reality is that I moved to Puerto Rico. I had this big vision to build a retreat center here and to support people like me that are stressed out and burnout, and to help them connect to nature and to connect to themselves and go through some personal growth experiences to shift their mindsets. And that trajectory didn't go as like exactly as I thought it would. First big idea project kind of floundered after a couple of years of a bunch of work because the Puerto Rican government announced they were going to default on all their debts. And so our investors got a little cold feet and started to pull out right at that point, and things got worse economically. Then I pivoted and was like, okay, I'll just, continue to use the properties here and do retreats and keep the business going. And then the Zika virus thing came to Puerto Rico, which was really, frankly, nonsense because the Centers for Disease Control were just trying to raise an extra $2 billion in federal funding. And Zika has already been around since 1947, so it was nothing new. But the media blew up, and then I lost all those contracts, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to just go back to Seattle, find some work. And right about that time, a friend of mine had this abandoned structure that he owned, and he was like, hey, do you want to buy this? Like, I've got these other structures I'm working on. I don't really care about this one. So handshake deal, easiest real estate deal I've ever done. I had a loan that was pre-approved, but they were super slow here. The banks in Puerto Rico are super slow. And so I just cashed in my 401k and handed them a check, assuming I was going to replenish my 401k when the bank loan came through. Anyway, the bank loan continued to delay. And then I had this project and I was already starting stuff. And then we got hit with two massive hurricanes, Hurricane Irma and then Hurricane Maria. And Maria was like the biggest hurricane in 100 years and basically flattened the island. We didn't have electricity where I'm at for about 11 months. And then we didn't have cell phone service for 6 months. So the bank waited like 3 months after the hurricane I think they sent me an email, they didn't call me, and just said, oh yeah, we're not going to fund your project anymore. So at that point I was like completely beside myself, thinking, wow, I cashed in my 401k. I already went through all my savings the first 2 years I was here trying to build a bigger project. What am I doing, and why am I continuing this mountain? So basically I was like halfway up the mountain, big rock slide happened, pushed me back down, and then I was asking myself, like, do I keep going or do I just go back somewhere else and get a normal job again? Obviously I kept going. Some people would say it's stubbornness. I prefer to use the word persistence. And so I just continued. I had to do a lot of the construction myself. I had to really bootstrap it. I self-funded it. I'd go to the States and do team building for companies there. Luckily, I had some really good, solid contracts with some larger companies that kept me working. And I would just come back and build. And so over time, I got this thing ready to open. I started to get a team together, trained the team. We got ready to open. And a month after we were open, the pandemic shut us down. So,
oh my God.
I'm like, I got past the landslide from last time. And then boom, another one comes back down. I'm like, how long is this pandemic going to last? I didn't know. So I was holding on to employees too long. I burned through what little cash I had at that point. And then finally, a couple years later, we tried to open and, we got open. And so we've been open about 5 years now, and it's been ups and downs. But I would say that each year progressively gets better. But the most important thing is to see the level of transformation that people are going through, that we're able to achieve just by, I do team building retreats with our own team every 3 or 4 months. I have a really amazing manager. The first team that I had, we struggled. It wasn't quite, we didn't have all the right skill sets. And then the team we have now is just operating at such a high level because they too feel like they're doing work that's so purposeful and meaningful, and they see the transformation people go through. And so we're working for that. So if a karma bank were a real thing, our karma bank would be super full. The physical bank is still, I'm still working on getting the physical bank full, but I know we're going to get there. We're on our way. It feels super meaningful. I continue to go through a lot of growth. This last year I've been writing a book. I'm just finishing the final edits of the book. And it's kind of partially personal story, but then a lot of the conscious communication tools that really help people create mindset shifts to unlock the things that I've been able to unlock and hopefully give them a shortcut so they don't need to go through a heart issue to be able to then learn these things.
That's interesting. I'm curious, going from interacting with a lot of people, big business, corporate executives, and just generally the business culture. I'd be curious to hear your diagnosis or your perspective about where do you think most of the business culture is, and what are the blind spots that keep people from living a more purposeful life, or to be more connected to their aliveness, or anything else you've learned in that regard?
Great question. So where are the blind spots with corporate America right now?
Yeah.
Well, I would first kind of break it down into different categories. There's already the purpose-driven organizations that are doing like so purpose-driven work. Some of them are marketing really well, but not actually following through very well.
Yeah.
And I've done work with a lot of those companies, and I see it, especially when I'm inside and working, it's like, it's not fully there. Then there's like that's sort of in the middle. On the far side, I would say there's companies that just don't care. Frankly, they're just bottom line driven. A lot of those, majority of those are publicly traded, where, board members are just only want to, make sure that they're getting money in their pockets. And I've watched several companies go from being privately held to then publicly traded, and just watch the culture erode and the business just kind of like flounder, and they go through CEO after CEO after CEO trying to fix it. And that's not the issue. It's just the mindset that's the issue. They've lost the heart and soul of the culture. And so I'm super passionate about like, what are the mechanics that make such an amazing culture? And that's by prioritizing the people. And so in this case, so I would say there's kind of that bottom line driven, there's sort of the mission driven, and then there's a really deeply mission driven. And there aren't a lot of companies that are like that, but there are some amazing ones that are out there. And I would say that right now, because of the political situation in the United States, there's a broader and broader division happening in the effort around being purpose-driven, taking care of the people, taking care of the environment, ensuring diversity. There's just a big division happening, and almost that division is widening because of the political polarization that's happening. So for me, I don't mind which type of company shows up to work with us, as long as they're open and curious. So if they're just bottom line driven and they're not open and curious, then they're not the right fit for me to work with, because otherwise I'm showing up as a hero and I'm trying to fix something that isn't mine to fix. That's their awakening to go through. So in essence, I just need to make sure that people are open and curious in order to help them maybe look at what the results could be, or how the results could be different if they were slanting more towards purpose and how they inspire their people.
Could we speak of maybe a little bit of the space we create for those transitions, right? And maybe through your experience, Yancy, so you had this event, you woke up, and you mentioned the coaching you went through. Like, what else? First, what helped you in this transition, if there's other things that you can mention, and what maybe you would have needed? Like, what do you wish now you would have had, now that you're a coach and you know so many things? Like, what would you wished for as support in that phase of transition?
I like that question. The book that I'm writing is actually written from the lens that if I would have only had this book back then. So that's one thing I'm doing.
It's a great gift then.
Another thing is realizing how our patterns they tend to be pretty ingrained in us, these central repeating patterns. And so my pattern to struggle and work hard and create potential burnout for myself, I've faced more times than the first time. And so that's been a fascinating thing to really look at and reflect on. And then I would say like mentorship. If I would have had stronger mentorship earlier on, that would have been different. Luckily, Gay and Katie Hendricks have been amazing mentors that's helped me get more comfortable in my own skin as a leader and learn so much over the years. But I think that the book is probably the biggest thing. And that's a lot of it embodies their work, but also embodies just the awarenesses that are hard to see when we're in our daily grind. And so if you have a lot of people hopefully listening to this podcast about like, how do you make that transition happen? I also know that it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to jump from a really nice salary, a retirement program, living in a city where I knew everybody and could walk down the street and run into tons of friends. Like all of that, that's a hard thing to jump from. But there was something within me, my soul, that was just saying I needed to go on this next adventure. I needed to climb this next mountain in order to evolve as a leader, as a human, as an individual. So following that inner wisdom was, I think, super important versus having regrets, because I think it would have been really easy and comfortable to stay where I was at.
Yeah. And is that something you learned to listen to yourself, to listen to that inner calling, or is that something you've been good at your whole life? Because you started with your heart, right? You started with a mission that was also, which is not always the case. So
yeah, I would say that I'm much more in tune with and able to listen to my higher self, my intuition, wisdom, however you want to frame it, and the body intelligence or my body's reaction when I wasn't listening was something I was overriding and ignoring. So I was already getting many signs when I was burning out of like, hey, I'm not aligned, but I was ignoring that and pushing through. So now I catch that stuff way sooner. I listen much better. It's much louder. It's hard to ignore it now. I even have a whole chapter on intuition and how that even works, or how you can even get to that place of listening consistently. But that's, I think, for people that are contemplating the transition, it is both a balance of listening to your heart and your head, because a lot of times if we just listen to our head, we can be stuck in so many limiting beliefs that never allow us to push to that next place.
yeah,
It's interesting because, kind of like a lot of the people we're talking to and we want to help are people that either they exited entrepreneurs and they've just sold their business. So in one sense, they get to that place because they develop this really, they have to be persistent, they have to have a lot of skills, they have to be really driven. But at the same time, and that's something I experienced because I built a business that I sold 2 years ago. And you get, at the same time, you're supposed to be happy because you got a check, you're succeeding, but at the same time, suddenly you're just like, what do I do with myself? And your body, it becomes kind of addicted to this state of being stressed or busy or this adrenaline. And one of the things Natalia and I were talking just earlier is about like the time that it takes to kind of like unravel that state of being and this way. And it's hard to accept that you cannot get out of it just through thinking about it, but you actually have to take the time to unravel what's happening in your body. And especially for you, since you went through that very
physical experience,
dramatic, inciting event, and you were already fit and working out and healthy and everything. I'm just curious, like, how did it, like, were the different stages of you getting back into this equilibrium or this state that's more relaxed, or how being in also the natural environment you were in helped you?
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's actually one of the first things we do with leaders when they come here is we get so many A-type sort of amped up personalities that we take them into nature. And we start to, I'll use a form of basically forest therapy to dial up their senses. So we're tuning them into the tastes, into the smells, into the sounds, into the how things feel on their skin, the touch, and really slowing them down by getting them hyper-focused on their senses. What that does is it starts to bring them to a whole new level of presence. And once they start to get to a heightened sense of presence, it opens up curiosity. And then the world starts to change because they start to get curious from here, not from here. And so when they're getting curious from their heart and not from their head, then the results and the outcomes start to change. So similarly for me, I already grew up in the woods. So I was already pretty in tune with my heart and connecting to nature in that way. And nature is like, that was the body of my work, was like, how do we build buildings in harmony with nature? So I was already in tune with complex systems and ecosystem studies. And now, and after I was making that transition, one of the main reasons I fell in love with Puerto Rico is because I kite surf and I kiteboard, and there's a warm ocean here and there's wind. And that was one of the things calling to me is I made a promise to myself, if life is short, then why not live in a place where I feel like I'm thriving physically, where I have so much more vitality. And so 13 years ago or 14 years ago when I first came to Puerto Rico, that's that's what helped me fall in love with this place, and that's what's kept me here.
That's
That
wonderful.
sounds great. Yeah. Sounds like a great place to be. I'm wondering, as you were speaking of how you lead these leaders in the woods, and I was just kind of sensing you, as their guide, as their Sherpa in the forest, and I was wondering, how do you see yourself now? Like, what's the identity shift that you've been through from your first mountain to this second one? Yeah, what has changed?
Yeah, I love that question, because what's changed is I'm not climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
It's more about being. It's more about breathing. It's more about less efforting and
Yeah.
being in flow.
Yeah.
So as I am guiding a group, I just watch and notice what's happening in nature, and I use that as a learning experience. It might be, I have so many magical things that happen. There was one point where I was leading a group of designers, they're architects, and I was like, how many of you do nature whispering? And I just made up the term. And they're like, oh, I'm not sure. And I'm like, well, it's about slowing down and just like seeing what happens. And I was like pointing around, and all of a sudden this big black bumblebee lands on my finger and then just starts moving down my arm all the way up. And I'm like, yeah, that's the magic of being in nature. You never know what can happen. And the bee just kind of hung out on my, and the people were freaking out. And I'm like, why are you afraid? Like, this bee is not going to harm me. I'm okay with it. And then a couple of them were like, that's a drone. You totally made that up. And I'm like, it's not a drone. And then the bee flew off. But the more that we slow down, that's the big thing, is like, it's less like, I already have enough wisdom to just show up, breathe, and be at whatever happens. And from those moments, insights come through that I think are super profound. They're beautiful metaphors. And that's one of the things I love, is like balancing whatever happens in nature with a metaphor that can be learned from. It's like moving through muddy situation. I like taking leaders through sticky, muddy, not very defined trails and seeing how they navigate it, because the way they move their bodies tells me so much about how they actually organize themselves in their business. Some will just like plow through the mud, get all muddy and not really care. Some will be like, there's actually another route that doesn't look very muddy. Let me use that strategy. Some will be like, I'm going to wait and follow everybody else. Another might be like, I'm not getting muddy. I have new shoes on. I'm going to go the other direction. And it's fun to watch that and then help them see that that's like how else that plays out in their leadership style. And for them to be like, I had never thought about it that way. And then for them to try on a different format of moving their bodies through these muddy situations the rest of the trail based on what they see others doing. So it's kind of funny, alchemic, or like an alchemy of like blending nature and leadership development. But I have fun. I'm in my zone of genius. I'm doing what I love, and it's super easy.
Well, and it sounds like it works, because you've done like 500 of those now.
I've done a lot of individual solo leadership retreats, and then over 100 group retreats now.
I'm curious if you have some stories of people, especially people you work one-on-one with groups, and what kind of transformation or outcomes or stories they tell you, let's say a year after or after, where something has really shifted. Do you have any of those stories?
Well, I get calls or text messages all the time now. It's super cool. I ran into someone, and I did a retreat in Atlanta, Georgia, like 8 years ago, and an architect, and he's like, I still do that breathing technique you taught me. And I was like, wow, I don't even know which one it was, because I know many different breathing techniques. But yeah, I think the most profound transformation is just watching what can happen in a 5-day period. Just seeing how the color in people's eyes can change. There's biophotons it's a scientifically measurable way of seeing how the light that we carry can increase as we have more vitality in us, versus when we're depressed or worn down, that our light diminishes. And so I don't know if I'm seeing the biophotons or if I'm just seeing the colors change in people's eyes, but that to me is super profound. We've got so many beautiful reviews that people have written, and we do hear often how we've changed people's lives. I think, wow, there's the most profound difference. There's a woman that we collaborate with. Her name is Melissa, and she brings moms who have lost their children to suicide.
Wow.
And some of these moms are professionals that work in companies. Some are just moms, but it doesn't really matter. They've all shared the same loss. And just to see the difference of like supporting them with feeding them healthy food, getting them out in nature, helping them connect to each other, and going through a shared journey, it changes so much despite the loss that they've gone through. So there's a wide range of retreats that we do. And I would say that's probably the most profound. And then I do quite a few entrepreneurs organization retreats and YPO or Young Presidents Organization retreats. And some of those can be pretty deep as well because they all show up like, we want to go deep. And I'm like, okay. I love the enthusiasm. And then when they're getting deep, there's a lot of discomfort. But on the other side, it's pretty fun. I try to make depth and fun, although what I think is fun out in nature isn't always fun for everybody.
Right. Let's climb through the mud.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I wonder if legacy is something important for you here, and it's something you think about now in this.
So that's actually what the ending of the book is about. It's about an amplified ripple effect. So the book is called Amplify Your Leadership, and the last section of the book is about an amplified ripple effect, which I call ripplification. So ripplification is this idea of amplifying your ripple effect in ways that you've inspired hopefully hundreds, if not thousands of people to show up in a way that they're creating their own ripple effects where they're more conscious about how they're showing up. They're more conscious about the choices they're making. So as far as legacy goes, like the people I've done retreats with, the lives that I've supported, both with my own team, because I don't do this work alone. I have an amazing team here. And so between all of us, like the lives that we're helping transform, that's amazing. That's like if I already feel very fulfilled from that point. But now with the book that explains really the steps of what a leader should consider going through to achieve this place of ripplification, there's still strategy that goes into it, because if you can make the biggest impact with the least amount of effort in having
that was still your unconscious self trying to slip in.
Let's struggle and work hard at this. It's really about showing up without so much effort to create, to leave a legacy. It's not a legacy with a capital L. It's more of a legacy that happens as a result of a way of being.
Yeah. And that's really what I got from your answer of like the identity, regarding the identity, right? It's like from a marathon and savior of the world kind of climber to just being and trusting that you have enough to give.
You know what really comes out for me in hearing what you have to say, but also seeing you here, is really the word is vitality, and how connected you are to this sense of being alive, and that's aliveness, and that's what you spark in the people that come in contact with you. And a lot of, we could talk a lot about what's wrong with the world, but in a way it's like we need to re-engage with this sense of aliveness and this vitality and being connected with nature and also with each other, not in a way that, humans are not machines, people are not robots. And so that's what's really coming out of your sharing, is really like how connected you are to, and not just connected as a concept, but that's your everyday experience, and that's what people come to experience, and that in and of itself is enough in terms of sparkling transformation in the people that come and spend time in your retreats.
We have really high levels of depression, high percentages of people that are struggling with their mental health. And so I definitely believe that we have a pretty simple formula to help reconnect people to that vitality that you're speaking of. And as they get that taste of being in their vital bodies, because they're eating healthy food, they're getting out into nature, they're moving their body, they're learning breathwork techniques, they're going through transformation, that vitality that lights they're experiencing hopefully will light up behavior changes that are longer and more sustaining, so that they can inspire others to do the same, and in return create more kindness in the world and more joy.
So if we're imagining we're talking to some of the people who we hope will be listening to this, who are kind of like either thinking about their next step or about to make to say, okay, now I've reached some kind of success, but now I want to aim towards more contribution and making that jump, what would you say to such a person, or what would you be your top 3 piece of advice or wisdom or that you would want to share?
Well, one, I think they should go on your retreat that the two of you are going to do to help them unpack a lot of this stuff, because so many leaders don't know what they don't know about their unconscious commitments, their limiting beliefs, their ways that they've been organizing themselves that aren't necessarily going to help them feel so fulfilled or vital. And I wouldn't have seen those things had it not been for a great coach, had it not been for, striving to get support from others. Obviously, it also requires people to show up open and curious and be adventurous in their own personal growth journey. But that would be one.
Say to someone who's just at that threshold, who's just I'm about to sell my business, I'm about to,
or like I just had a burnout, or, I'm like, and I'm a bit lost and I don't know.
Time.
Yeah.
Take time. Even if they're not doing an organized silent retreat, to take time to really get into the silence, to take time out in nature, real, like wild nature, not a golf course, like real raw nature, because that time to reflect, I don't think happens often enough for busy business owners. It's always a chase for the next, achieving the next KPI or achieving the next threshold, and that reflection time doesn't always occur. So that would be one. That's why I said the retreat would be one, time to reflect is another, and then getting support. So getting some good coaching support, so that if they're not already aligned with their zone of genius or know what that is, that's a Gay Hendricksism. It's from his book, The Big Leap. And the simple definition is that you can't wait to get out of bed to do it in the morning. You're so excited about what you're doing that you don't even care if you're getting paid. You don't see yourself ever getting tired of doing it, and it's just super easy for you. So if people haven't found a lifestyle or created a lifestyle where they're doing things that are in their zone of genius, to get support to find out what that is and where they're leveraging their naturally given talents and strengths. Because life is too short to not leverage that. And we often get stuck in sort of these roles where we're trying to force ourselves to be something where it might just be in our zone of excellence or our zone of competence, but it doesn't light us up. It doesn't give us the vitality. And the world deserves to experience more people lit up and in their vitality.
Yeah, that is so true.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe one last question, because we know your dog wants to go to the beach, so we want to be respectful of time. Who else should we be talking to about this?
About the transitions or about moving into purpose-driven work?
Yeah. Well, kind of both, because we kind of believe they're connected, right? But yeah.
Well, maybe you could call Gay Hendricks.
That would be amazing.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Thanks, Yancy. Yeah.
I can put you in contact, because he really understands what it means to take the big leap. He's written a book on it. What is that big leap? That big leap is stepping into what you are here in this world to do.
Yeah.
So I feel like he would be an amazing one to connect with. Yeah, I think that's the main one that comes to mind. Katie Hendricks is also amazing. They're both phenomenal. Some really interesting examples of purpose-driven leaders. Laura, who created the Lara Bar, I talked to her not too long ago. She was really inspiring to talk to. She just recently sold her company and is also in the process of like what's next. And I find it's always fascinating where these companies that are built with so much purpose and dedication, then once they sell, I'm always like, now what's going to happen to the brand?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's there's a few examples of that, especially in the food space. And anyway, but they're very interesting. Well, that was so great to talk to you, Yancy, and we look forward to hear about your book.
Yep.
Is it coming out?
Is it going to come out?
Well, my goal is to have it out before the end of the year. So I'm just going through final edits, and then, definitely have it out before the end of the year. It'll be Amplify Your Leadership. So understanding the ripple effects that impact us as leaders, our culture, and the world. So I'm excited about it, because it's literally, like I said, the guidebook that I wish I would have had 30 years ago.
That's great. All right. We'll distribute it.
Yes.
As much as we can.
Yes.
Thank you again. It was a pleasure, Yancy.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate what you both are doing to help inspire these leaders to do and achieve so much more now at this point in their lives.
It's great. And we wish you a great walk with your dog on the beach.
Yeah, enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon.